I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, guys, take two. Here we go. Richie, I was expecting some elk sounds here at the beginning of this thing, and
well, we had them there and we played them on the first round, but then you just kind of ran with the weather.
I did not hear them. I didn't hear them. So, look, guys, kind of in the spirit of the recent podcast that we did about tree stand safety, we this one is about. It's kind of like things can go wrong, and you need to be prepared and know how to handle it. And I think we've got a great example of that today, Toxie. You'll get to hear more about this. So let me kind of look around the room. We got Richie. Thank you for doing that, Richie. We got Richie running the board. It's good to see Richie. And don't hit the horns for yourself, Richie. We got Mac over here going to fact check us. We've got a guest sitting on the couch, Dr. Robbie Godwin. He's a radiologist from Columbus, Mississippi, a legendary radiologist.
Legendary.
What I hear. And he's got a great story about a hunting kind of incident that happened that he's going to share with us.
Wow.
Toxie, you look like you're
wet.
Yeah, you look like something's happening.
Like a drowned rat?
Don't say the word.
Yep.
Well,
wet.
We'll just move on from there. And then sitting in Lanny's chair, we've got Dr. Ned Miller.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Yeah, and we asked you here knowing that we were going to have a story that could have some medical questions that would probably be over Dudley and my head.
We're going to need some lingo.
Yeah. We want to have some.
I'm here for the elk hunting.
Yeah, yes.
But look, before we get too started, there's a couple of things. There's some blood on the biologic that's happened recently. There's a young hunter named John Maxwell Pugh that shot his first deer with a crossbow. And just want to give a shout out to him. And
congrats, John Maxwell.
What about, did y'all see Mark and Terry's mother, Miss
Yeah,
Lucille?
That's cool.
I think she's 91, Toxie.
91. He sent me a message just as it happened.
How special is that?
It was remarkably special. I sent him a message. She was with Terry, but then Mark got the message and he sent me the picture right away. But I couldn't get a message to him because they didn't have a signal, so I sent it to him. Said, forward this. I sent it to Terry. Show this to your mom. I sent her a message. She's an inspiration.
Yeah, she is.
I can't wait to see how all that went down. She is a pistol.
So, he won't let me show it. He sent the video, and it is so dramatic. You'll be a nervous wreck by the time she shoots with a crossbow. And, I mean, she center punched him 12 ring.
I'll be.
Awesome.
But it takes a while. And I won't. He'd get mad if I gave it away. But whenever they show it, you need to be sure and watch it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So you need I'm sure everybody follows the juries on Instagram. You'll be able to see that coming up here pretty soon. Mac, you got anybody to add?
Yeah, so one of our customers, John Ramsey from South Alabama, so his wife, first time she ever goes hunting, she went with her dad, who is 81 years old. And he makes longbows. And so they made this bow together and worked on shooting it. And she shot that 8-point at 13 yards in a field of Green Patch Plus.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a big deer.
And it was
but
cool.
Look at the
That
weapon.
is a big deer.
The weapon's taller than she is.
Yeah.
They said it was a really cool, just them spending time together, working on the bow, working on shooting it.
Man,
And
that
then,
gives me
Wow.
chills.
Yeah,
That gives me chills. That's amazing.
Dudley, you got anything?
Yes, our legendary warehouse friend, Marie, who handles everything back there, has a customer that she wants to give a shout out to. His name is Jared Carroll, and he's in Marshall, Arkansas. He's a big fan of the podcast and Biologic Seed. He's been working hard on his food plots and just wanted to say thanks. He's learned a lot from the podcast. So appreciate you, Jared.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good for her, too.
Well, Maria, she's good. She's very helpful. She takes care of your cats.
She keeps us straight.
My daddy has a lot of good sayings. One of them is he wants people that come to work. She's definitely one of those.
Yes, she is.
For sure.
So, guys, before we dive into this story, Robbie, this podcast is about elk. Dudley just got back from an elk trip. Could you take a few minutes and just...
Yeah, how was that?
Yeah, well, let's start with Dudley because I know about yours, Ned, and then you can jump right in. But would you tell a little bit about your story?
Sure.
Give us about the abbreviated version.
Okay, so the 12-minute version.
Yeah, the long version's only 15 minutes.
Okay, so Jason McKellar and I drew, and we got to go to New Mexico to Graham's Guide Service. We've been going there for years. It's an awesome crew, awesome food, awesome scenery. But this was my first chance. And anyway, the first morning we walk up this long ridge up to this, what do you call those things? Mesas, big old flat top thing. And there's elk bugling all around us. It was almost anticlimactic. It happened so quickly, but lots of heavy breathing on the first morning. We get up to the top, and we are just surrounded by bulls. And this is open sight muzzleloader, so the rut this time of year was kind of tailing down. And we got into, I think it was about 30 cows, and just looked up, and there is the herd bull standing there.
The price is wrong.
And anyway, it just happened so quick. But I took a shot and hit him, and we sat there. He stood there for 20 minutes.
No.
I put another one in, missed. It was 189 yards. I was shaking
That's a
by
good
then.
shot with open sights.
It is.
But
Yeah.
Seems impossible.
well, it's a huge animal. So I don't know if shooting 22s as a kid helped or what. But anyway. Missed, and then
Since they didn't help on the miss.
So wait, you hit him the first time.
hit him the first time.
And
we thought it was kind of far back because he just stood there, like maybe it was a liver hit or something. And so we kind of got nervous. I tried to put another one in him. I was shaking. I missed. And then about 20 minutes later, he gave me a partial shot. And right when I was about to take another shot, he was gone. And so we just kind of crept up behind him, ended up jumping him, which was not good, but we found some blood.
That's a roller coaster.
Yeah. We found some blood, and it had a lot of bubbles in it.
That's good.
So we were thinking lung. And anyway, Joseph Graham, the owner of Graham's Guide Service, told us just to sit back for a minute and let him do some quiet sneaking down that trail. And he was just 80 yards down the trail. And it happened to be a really good bull too. So I would have been happy with any bull and getting to see all that scenery, but I was blessed with a pretty good one.
How about that? What is a pretty good one? How do you?
Joseph scored him at 336.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And the only person out of the whole Mossy Oak group, I think we've been going there about 15 years. A guy named Ned Miller, who was sitting right next to me, killed like a 350 something out there.
Yeah. That
359.
359.
Yeah, it was right at 360. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That
Go
was
ahead and round it off, sure.
Yeah, it was about 360. But that was when they had scopes on muzzleloaders. New Mexico just recently changed that law where you couldn't have a scope on the muzzleloader. So I feel like I was cheating compared to your shot at 140 yards with open sights on a muzzleloader. That's fantastic.
189.
189, almost 200. Sorry. Don't let
Yeah,
me-
big difference.
Yeah, that is a big difference.
So when you're
That's
on
awesome.
out there on public land and you've got a bull that you've shot, you just run off. Do you worry about somebody else finding him or coming up there hunting and all of a sudden they stumble up on him or the blood trail? Does that go through your mind?
I would have never allowed that to happen to me.
I just leave it at that if I were you, Dudley.
Yeah.
Leave it to the viewer's
No.
imagination. I wouldn't
that's
get into
right.
any details.
But man, if you've never been out west, I really enjoy backpacking and camping. This was my first time to go on a big elk hunt, and it kind of combines everything. I really wished I could have covered more terrain, but I'll take 7 a.m. on the first morning any day of the week.
Yes.
But I got to do some little day hikes afterwards over the week and just had a blast. I will be putting in from here on out.
Well, congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, Ned, this is news to me now. What recently has happened to you in the elk world?
Just got back from Montana. We were up at in the Missouri River Breaks, which has a good reputation. It took us 5 years to draw that tag. We went public land, do-it-yourself style hunting, and it was more than most of the other hunts I've done. It was a grind. It was a 2-hour boat ride to where we were going, and
Good gracious.
yeah, once you're there and the boat's gone, you're there. And most of the hunts I've been on, you could walk back to the truck. It might have been 10 miles, but you could walk back to the truck. This one, you were there until the end of the hunt 6 days later.
Wow.
And got into some elk. It was 90 degrees in Montana one day while I was there.
Oh,
it was hotter
man.
there than it was here. But my partner, Dr. Steele, killed a 6x6 on day 3, and then I had a bull within bow range just before shooting light. It was just too early, so I let him walk. But we got into him, had good encounters, and by the end of the hunt, I told him I just wanted a drink with ice in it and a chair.
Yeah.
After 6 days of sitting on the ground and sleeping on the ground and eating freeze-dried food, and I couldn't wait to get to that burrito shop in town when we got out. But,
Did y'all encounter any wolves or grizzlies or anything like that?
we were in the eastern part of the state. I do a lot of research on bears and wolves before we go to these states. So we were in the northeastern part of Montana near Fort Peck, and there are not a lot of bears, not even really black bears in that area. So no, we didn't encounter any, didn't hear any wolves. There was a good many elk, good many mule deer.
Turkeys.
Yeah, saw a lot of turkeys.
There we go.
Yeah, sure did. And they'll walk right up to you out there. It's not like
Yeah, hit them again. Yeah.
not like a Mississippi Easter. Anyway, yeah, a lot of good non-predatory game in that part of the world.
Very cool.
It is a pretty part of the world.
It is. It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a great hunt.
we did great.
I got the text on the last day when he was headed back. He said, 1, I've never been so homesick in my life. I'm ready to get home. 2, he said,
true story.
the first word of the text said, "Oh well, tag soup again."
Yeah, that happens. Yeah,
It definitely happens.
it's about but I'd still go even if I.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I went-
exciting. Your partner got one.
Yeah, we got to
That his first one?
That is his second one.
Second one.
Last year we went to Idaho on the Oregon border. That's when the bull almost ran me over, and he had to shoot that bull just to save my life.
What a friend.
Yeah, right.
I would have done the same thing for you.
I bet he was just-
I bet Bobby would too.
Yeah, I don't know. He might have thought about letting that bull run.
Oh me. Well, let's turn our attention.
Yes.
We sitting on the couch. We've got Dr. Robbie Godwin. Now, let me point out that he's got a phone over there, and he has alerted me that if this phone goes off, he's on call, and he could have to jump up and perform some of those legendary radiologist duties. So if we have a gap in this show, that's what happened, guys. So, but you recently, Mac was telling us about a story. It was the wildest thing I've heard. Would you please just tell us a little bit about you, start at the beginning, and let's take us on this adventure with you.
So again, I'm Robbie Godwin, born and raised down here in the Deep South, but I've always had a love for hunting and have, hunted a lot of different places. But I'm especially fond of archery elk hunting, and I have a dear friend from Texas who we kind of got into archery elk hunting together, and we've just sort of made it a yearly venture for us. And we also drew in New Mexico, and that's actually lucky for us, was the second time in 4 years we've drawn in a group draw. And I've never been that lucky and with anything else. And so I was blessed to be able to go on this hunt. But this is a location that we've gone to. We've bought landowner tags a couple of times and drawn a couple of times. So we're very familiar with this family and the people we were hunting with. And but this particular year, we're first season archery, which is, historically, if you're an archery elk hunter, first season tends to be a little bit slower, but our luck has been a little bit better during first season, especially, herd bull standpoint, being able to call in herd bulls. Not quite as much action, but, or as much bugling, but seem to be a little bit, I wouldn't say easier. That's right. They haven't been messed with yet. A little bit, it can be a little more successful, maybe, So anyway, we were, it was especially dry at the end of the year. And so we're out, on this hunt and decide to hunt water in the evenings. Basically, we're, listening for bugles, spot and stalking in the morning, and water hole hunting in the afternoon. And so it's getting later in the hunt. It's been pretty slow. And we finally get the right wind for this particular water hole. And my good friend and guide, I would say, had gone and built a brush blind a few days before, in case we got the opportunity to hunt this water hole. And so it's about 2:00 in the afternoon. We decide to go up there, and we, you can kind of drive in most of the way kind of through a mountain road, so to speak, and then a short hike over to the brush blind that he had built. And it's kind of on an incline looking over a water hole that had basically, I would say, 60-70% dried up. So you're kind of looking down on it. And like all bow hunters or any kind of hunter, you kind of want to go to the blind and make your nest, And so he had gone, and I'm sitting in the blind. I'd ranged everything out and made sure I had plenty of room to draw. And of course, it's all pinon pines and cedar trees. That's really what you build the blinds out of, right? And so I'd taken a chair with me, and the front end of the chair was actually up on rocks because I was on an incline to get the chair kind of at level. And so while I was kind of building my nest, so to speak, and I noticed there were a couple of branches from the brush blind that I wanted to break off, but I couldn't get out of the blind and go break those off because it would have been too high in elevation because I was on the edge of this hill, So through the opening of the blind right there I decided, well, I'll just kind of lean over and break these off. But prior to that, I had kind of done what I've done, for my entire life bow hunting. I knocked an arrow and put the bow up on a stob, sticking out of a limb, 4 or 5 inch stob. And I had it hanging there, and the broadhead was facing outward through the opening in the blind. And I'm like, well, I need to move this bow set up here so I stay out of the broadhead. I shoot fixed broadheads. And so I took the bow and I just flipped it around on the stob so I could lean through the opening in front of me. And I reached in and broke the limbs off. And as I was coming back through the opening, either I bumped the bow or the bow slid off the little stob, the little limb it was on. And it all kind of happened just instantaneously. It always does, yeah. I was leaning back into my chair, was sitting down, and out of the corner of my eye, I just caught the movement of the bow falling. And I just instinctively reached up to catch the cam of the bow. And when I did, it was, like I said, it was kind of an instantaneous thing. I lunged forward a little bit, raised my hands up, and when I did, the broadhead basically just buried in my chest. And the
Gosh.
And what I had realized, and it's like, again, this is all happening instantaneously. The bow had shifted down. I shoot with the quiver on, and because the bow had, I had it kind of in its natural position, but I turned it around. It was a little more unnatural to have the quiver against the limb, and the arrow had swung down, and then when I lunged at it, my hands just naturally straightened the bow, and that's when the broadhead just embedded in my chest.
And where you're touching your chest is very close to where I think the heart is.
Yeah, I would say 3 inches above that area. It's right under the collarbone.
Did you hit a rib?
So that was, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. The thing about it was, it didn't even hurt. I really didn't even feel it.
And how deep did the broadhead bury?
It buried up to the entire broadhead was in there. It buried up to the shaft.
Ugh.
And so I just kind of froze for a second. And of course, a million things start running through your mind instantaneously. And as a physician, and Ned would know, the first thing I thought was, I don't know if it pierced my lung.
Right.
And I don't know if my lung is about to collapse, and I don't know what major vessels that it might have hit in that moment. So everybody is, people that know about this kind of ask me, they're like, well, why'd you pull it out? And so I decided that I would pull it out because it went in so easily. And it was one of those things where I thought that if it had not gone into my lung, I didn't want it to work its way in any further by me trying to hold pressure on it. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I'm going to take my chances with pulling it out and holding pressure myself, understanding kind of where it was, the anatomy in there. I just immediately thought that I think my best chance is to hold pressure on it with the arrow out, not try to leave it and do something.
And with it, when you pull out a chest, a puncture wound in the chest, the second you pull it out, you learn a lot about what has happened.
Nature of it. Yeah. So, on that note, when I pulled it out, I was like, "Oh, please God, don't let there be bubbles."
Right.
Don't let there be, air hissing out of my chest.
Or pulsatile blood.
So I had a lot of blood. I was bleeding pretty badly, but I ended up once I pulled the arrow out, I just put my hand over the site and just held pressure and did nothing for just a minute to try to gather myself, because I was about, I knew that the nearest highway I was probably about 7 or 8 miles from, and where that mountain road or country road, so to speak, met the highway was about 35 miles from the nearest town that had a medical facility. Lord. And my guide was probably, he wasn't close. He had dropped me off to sit on the water hole. So, and I told him, when I say my guide, this friend of mine, and when he had dropped me off, I had looked at my phone, and I had a two-way radio. I had both of those. Did not have a satellite phone, but I had one bar of service. So when he said, "Do you have service?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And then I, of course, had a radio with me. Well, I sat there for a few minutes, I would say 3 or 4 minutes, to try to decide if my lung was collapsed or collapsing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So what? I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
What y'all may not know about Robbie is Robbie's an interventional radiologist. So Robbie deals directly with vascular issues every day, and he's, he deals with blood vessels and torn blood vessels, and we've shared cases where we've had to get his help to go into a blood vessel. So at what point do you start becoming a doctor and thinking?
So that was the
What blood vessel is this in?
I guess
where
that
am I
was
going with
that's
this?
where I was with it. I guess my first assessment was, okay, did this get in my lung? Am I going to have a tension pneumothorax in the next few minutes, and I'm going to die right here? Okay, and so I sat there and I just held pressure over the site. I'm like, I'm going to deal with the bleeding secondarily to, okay, is my lung about to collapse? Yeah. And so I just kind of tried to control my breathing. I just took slow, deep breaths. Wow. I didn't have pleuritic chest pain.
So you started thinking about the time that the Broadhead came out, you were coming to your senses.
I had already decided.
I'm just shocked at your presence of mind
Yeah,
already.
And so I had decided that if the Broadhead, once I pulled the Broadhead out, if there was air, if there were bubbles or I heard any hissing sound, I'd kind of already decided, well, I can either manage this through that hole, or I may have to take another arrow and create another hole
for a chest tube,
to manage a tension pneumothorax. And I'm like, well, it didn't hurt that bad the first time, and now I'm pretty amped up. So we're gonna. But thank God I didn't. Yeah. When I took my hand off, I didn't. There were a couple little small bubbles just from the air that I had, but I didn't have this hissing sound or a lot of air coming out. And I wasn't short of breath more than just being excited. So then I said, well, I'm going to assess the bleeding now. And my thought was, okay, and for non-medical people, my heart really wasn't in play in this. It was more of the lung. And there are two vessels that run up under your collarbone. One, it's an artery and a vein, a major artery and vein that go out to the arm. But they're big blood vessels, and they're utilized for different medical devices and things like that. And I was just thinking, okay, now I probably am not going to have a tension pneumothorax, and if my lung does collapse, it's not collapsing fast enough, I might be able to get some help, And so I took my hand off and I looked and I was like, okay, if I've got pulsatile blood, then I'm probably in trouble.
You mean like if blood shoots out of your chest?
So there's a difference between arterial blood and venous blood.
Right.
So arterial blood is a much higher pressure, comes out a lot faster, and when people bleed to death, typically it's arterial bleeding that causes that. And so those two vessels, if it's the vein that's bleeding, it's a much lower pressure system, and you can gain control of that much easier than a high pressure arterial bleed. Okay. So I had just held pressure. I was bleeding through my fingers, but I was like, okay, first thing, I think my lung is going to stay inflated enough right now. And the other thing is, assess this for arterial bleeding. And so I've kind of got the nerve at that point to take my hand off. And once I took my hand off, of course, I've got this big gaping wound. I've pulled my shirt over And so I take, I take that and take my hand, take it and look at it, and it's bleeding venous blood in lieu of arterial blood. It's just it's bleeding a lot, but it's not spraying.
High pressure.
So and it's darker colored blood too, just for people listening.
Darker
if you
colored.
See dark,
it's not bright. The blood you
is,
don't want to see when you're archery hunting after you shoot something. Okay, you don't want to see the dark blood with no bubbles, and that's the blood that I was seeing. So a little hunting tidbit there. So and
I'm holding my breath over here.
Yeah.
I need to.
Yeah, lucky for you, you were there. By the way,
Well said.
And so then at that point I'm like, okay, I think I'm not going to bleed to death in the next few minutes, and I'm not going to have a tension pneumothorax. I've got to, I start thinking about my family and my kids, and I'm an older dad and I have young kids, and I'm like, this is going to be the dumbest thing ever that I've stabbed myself with a broadhead in the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to die right here. And really, that's what my wife's going to have to tell my kids. And on the other side of it is
Go ahead.
We'll talk. Hospital.
Yeah, we'll talk amongst ourselves here for a second.
Hey guys, listen up. Let me tell you about an awesome deal Springfield Armory is offering now through the end of 2024. When you purchase a brand new model 2020 Waypoint or Redline rifle, you'll receive a model 2020 rimfire rifle with a black synthetic stock absolutely free. That's an over $400 value on the house. You know we love Springfield Armory and their top-notch products you'd be proud to hand down to your kids and grandkids. So why wait? Learn more about this incredible offer at GearUp2024.com. Springfield Armory. Defend your legacy.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
what he's talking about being worried about is this tension pneumothorax, now that he doesn't know that he knows rather that it's not an arterial puncture, but with air, when the lung gets punctured and it starts leaking air, it's not leaking air out into the atmosphere, it's leaking air into the chest. And your chest is a closed space, and it's only got enough volume to hold what's in there. So if you got air coming in your trachea, going out your lung into your chest, it's got to move stuff around to let the air be in your chest. And that will it's like putting a vice on your lung. And that happens that takes time. That's not an instant process. It takes, so you don't.
Well, I guess it kind of depends because, like you said, I do a lot of lung biopsies, and I have had them develop very slowly, and I've had them develop very quickly. It kind of depends on the size of the hole, and how much air is coming out. There was a movie a long time ago. I think it was called Three Kings. I think George Clooney was in it, and that's the best illustration of a tension pneumothorax that I have ever seen. Is where this guy gets a flailed chest and he puts a little valve sticks it into his chest and opens it to let the air out every now and then. And when you let the air out, your lung can inflate, which is kind of why I was considering at the moment I may have to
put a second hole in.
I may have to poke a hole and I could put my hand in this wound, my finger in this wound, and I did to try to help stop the bleeding. I put my finger down in the wound, but it was very inconveniently located, so to speak. The whole thing's inconvenient.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you got to have a wound, you don't want it on your chest.
And so I was thinking about another hole down lower.
Yeah.
and using a broadhead to do that to
decompress
if I had to
your
try
chest,
to get to decompress myself.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and I took a wilderness first responder class one time, and they were like, "Well, if you got a ballpoint pen,
that's
you can
right.
shove it
You
in
put
there,
it in
and put. If you got a spare balloon, you can put that on the end, and it's like a valve, to let the air out.
But as of on that note, I would recommend the broadhead over the ballpoint pen because it doesn't hurt as bad.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So Robbie, you were about to tell us that what was going through your mind was that your wife was going to have to tell your children that Dad somehow was impaled on a broadhead. It sounds kind of like an awkward, like you may have.
So I was thinking what I really thought, and I mean, maybe this is probably oversharing a little bit, but I thought nobody's going to understand what happened here. Nobody's going to know.
They could even think it was self-inflicted.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to think that I tried to kill myself with a broadhead. That I just took it and stabbed it in my chest.
That was going through your mind.
I thought that if my wife had, or number one, it would take, to me, I would think that it would take a long time for someone to figure out the mechanism of the whole thing. And in the meantime, if they ever figured out the mechanism, people would think that it was self-inflicted. And I didn't want that for my children.
Of course not.
I didn't want them to think that their dad had gone on a hunting trip, got off by himself, and had done something catastrophic, And I honestly, it was really I don't know where people stand with this, but I'm constantly praying and trying to calm down and think through the situation. And I'm trying to be I'm asking myself, okay, what would I do for you if I ran up on you?
Mm-hmm. So you're like patient and doctor all at one time.
And all of this and I was trying to organize and compartmentalize that in my mind, stay calm because the other thing is we're lowlanders, right? We're up at 8,000. You were talking about being out of breath. You're at 8,000 something feet. And so naturally your resting heart rate is higher. Everything's kind of revved up a little bit anyway, because you're at a higher elevation. You're not used to being at a higher elevation. So your body is adjusting to that elevation by elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure. So you've already got that going on, and now you're injured. And so your adrenaline is kind of ramped up. And
at this point in your story, just to bring everybody back around, you're 90 seconds into this at this point with all these thoughts going on.
Oh yeah, this is, your
brain gets really efficient.
This is,
when you have a near-death experience. And we're only about 90 seconds into what actually happened.
We're clicking
here.
along.
And you've already had all these thoughts about it. It's amazing.
And so at that point, I decided, okay, all right, I don't have this arterial bleed. I don't think my lung is collapsing in the moment, or enough to where it's affecting me to the point where, I shouldn't ambulate. And so what I did is I obviously the wound is up under my left collarbone. I'm right-handed, but I need to hold pressure. And so I'm starting to try to get help with my left hand. I'm on my phone, and I'm on, and I'm, got the radio there. So I pick up the phone, and I've got one bar service, and I start trying to call and can't make a call. So I really don't have any phone service. I have a little bit older iPhone, so I don't have the whole satellite aspect. I mean, you can call 911, but I mean, by the time 911 responded to that, cat's out of the bag at that point. And so I couldn't get anybody on the phone. So then I go to the two-way radio. Well, I, start calling everybody and my friends there. We're all within a few miles of each other hunting. And I could hear them talking, but they obviously couldn't hear me. Like and later they told me they could hear a bunch of static on it, but they couldn't hear what I was saying. So the nearest camp that we had on the way in there was probably about 2 miles away. And I knew there was a camper there, but I knew the guy that was there. We had seen him earlier in the hunt. I knew that he was not there, but at least there was a camper there. And I thought, well, maybe there's, Wi-Fi signal, or maybe he's got a guest with somebody there. So I just kind of left everything in the blind at that point, and I grabbed my phone, I grabbed a two-way radio, and I grabbed a bottle of water. And I just, shoved it in my pockets, and I just kept holding pressure and trying not to focus on the blood that I was losing, and said, okay, I got to get somewhere where I can get service and get help. And so I just took off walking. And one of the things I realized, and I'm like, oh, you idiot, you should have known better, but it became painfully obvious to me. You really can't hold good pressure while you're ambulating. So number one, you're amped up, and number two, you're walking, and number three, my wound is on a location of the body that's very difficult to hold pressure on.
And you can't wrap it either.
Yeah, and you
Not
can't
on
wrap
chest.
it. It's not like you can take your electrical tape and wrap it up.
Yeah.
Like, your only option is really to try to hold pressure.
Right.
So do you have, in your pack, being a doctor, do you have more like medical supplies than the average person might have?
Maybe in my pack. Now, this particular hunt was not a, quote, backpack hunt. So I just kind of had a day pack with essentials in it.
A Band-Aid for a blister or
right.
something. Yeah.
I always take a roll of electrical tape, because in my experience, little cuts and things, or, if something happened to a joint, you can make a little cast out of those. Or, electrical tape is just kind of a standby in my backpack. But I really didn't have anything that I needed for this kind of a problem.
Sure.
And the worst thing that I really didn't have is I thought that I had effective communication, and I did not have effective communication. And that was stupid on my part. That was the take-home lesson for me, is that's just dumb, and I would never recommend that to anyone. Be sure about your communication abilities. And so I took off walking, and I was trying to hold pressure, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing much better when I'm standing here holding pressure. And when I start walking, I'm just...
Are you leaving a blood trail?
I'm on me.
Yeah.
By this time it had soaked the front of my shirt and had gone down my pants, and and I maybe I did. I don't know. I was just trying to get to some help, to get phone service, or where they could hear me on the radio, and I had in my mind that camp. And so I started walked, and I finally got service and called my, and once I got service, I could communicate with everybody. And I was able to stop finally and hold pressure, more adequate pressure than what I could while I was walking. And so I got my friend, and I got people mobilized to come help me. And of course it took a while. You're out, and, it takes a long time. And I wouldn't look at the wound at that point other than to just try to hold better pressure. At this point, while I was walking and I figured out I couldn't hold very good pressure, I just put my finger in the wound itself, and I could hold better pressure like that. And thank goodness when I could stop, felt like I could take, because that was getting pretty painful.
Yeah, I'm sure that felt good.
Yeah. And so anyway, my friend got there, and the first thing and I'd already kind of decided, okay, what are my options medically speaking, as far as, calling an ambulance to come out there and then take me. Like that time frame is, a long time.
Yeah.
And so they might end up trying to fly fly a chopper in. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of feel like my lung's not collapsed. I don't have an arterial bleed. What I've got now is just a big gaping wound that I just need to get control of. Now, to your other question that you asked earlier, at camp, I always travel with what I call my MASH unit. And basically, it's a big cooler that's got a lot of medical supplies in it. I have, fluids, IVs, I've got medications, suture kits, all sorts of bandaging. I take it everywhere I go on all of my hunting trips in order to, for whatever occasion.
Sure.
And I told my friend guide that I was like, look, I think the best thing to do is to get me back to my kit, because what I really need to do is just get this bleeding stopped. And by that time, I would say it was probably 60% better. I had, reduced the bleeding by about 60%, but I still couldn't maintain it. I feel like I got either in the edge of the subclavian vein, Ned, but just the movement and everything, until I got still, I couldn't get good control of it.
Yeah.
And so the ride back was about a 40 minute ride back to camp. And so I got back to camp, and of course my friend, he's white as a ghost, but he jumped right in there, and just, he was, normally you would kind of, I don't know, you submit to your host, so to speak, but
especially if you're the patient. Yeah.
But I was just not, I don't know. Part of me wanted to control the situation, and part of me wanted to let go of the situation, but I just felt like that the best thing to do was for me to get back to the kit. Got back to the kit, and we kind of cleared off the table in the kitchen, and I taught him how to put on sterile gloves. So I had sterile gloves in the kit, and I had him just hold pressure on it while I set up basically a table there. And so I'm like, I got to clean this thing out. I got to do all this stuff too.
Got some whiskey and a knife. And
yeah, it's kind of
leather strap.
Yeah. And in that order, yeah. And but anyway, I got the kit out, and it was one of the things that really helped in this situation. And I know that accessibility, not everybody has this available to them, is I had some local anesthetic that has epinephrine in it.
Oh, yeah.
It's called lidocaine with epinephrine. We use it a lot for when we make surgical types incisions on people to limit bleeding locally. And you can inject it up under the skin, and not only does it numb the skin up, but it constricts the blood vessels. And that probably helped me more than anything. Once I drew up a syringe of that and injected that all in the wound, and I was just kind of flooded.
Could you see the wound? Could you see? Was it too high for you to see?
Yeah, I was kind of doing like this. I was looking down on it. I didn't have to have a mirror.
Yeah.
I could kind of see it like that. And my guide was, he would hold, I'd have him lift his hand up, and I would look, and then he would, and so I injected it and got it not only numb, but once the epinephrine kind of started working on the local blood vessels, it kind of shut down the bleeding even more.
Could you feel the pain by this point? Or were you still...
By that point, yes,
Yeah.
I could feel it because I had manipulated the wound, at that point. And so anyway, I'm like, what I got to do is I got to get this tightened up. I got this big gaping wound, and so what I need to do is essentially sew it up. And so I had suture and I had all that kind of stuff in the kit, and so I just did several really deep sutures, all the way as deep as I could take them. I wasn't closing layers or anything like that. I was just trying to stop bleeding. So I put those really deep sutures in and just tied them as tight as I could tie them. And then once it, and it was kind of like all of this happening and all these things running. But then once I got the sutures in, it just stopped. The bleeding just stopped.
How could you be sure you weren't still bleeding internally?
I wasn't 100% sure. I wasn't 100% sure, but by that time I'd kind of decided I had avoided the lung. I had avoided that artery that was there. So the only thing that could still be bleeding were really small vessels there. And I had decided I was not bleeding into the inside of my chest.
Yeah, you didn't feel any pressure.
But I did have this, I can show you a picture of that. Like by this point, my left breast is sticking out. I had a lot of blood down settling in
the tissues,
the tissues in my chest there. And so, but once I got it stopped and I just sat there for a little bit, I'm like, okay,
wow,
it's I'm gonna live. I think.
Like how long? I can hunt tomorrow.
How long?
Yeah,
he did.
Go ahead.
He did.
What's the time frame? So what is the time frame?
So it was about two. I would say it probably happened about 2:45 in the afternoon, and I don't know. This is probably not. I told Mac about this, but so I'm out there. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere elk hunting, and I got the bleeding stopped, and I felt like I was doing.
So you kept hunting. Tell me you kept hunting.
So I went back.
Hit the horns.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
man
God.
after my own heart.
That does sound like Ned. If there's ever been y'all got some kind of karma thing going on.
Yeah, well, and it went from they're going to think I am an idiot,
So I don't care,
to the most butch thing I have ever heard in my life. Sewed up my own chest wound and I went back hunting.
Well, I didn't quite. I was like, what? By this time, I'm very.
How much blood had you lost, do you think?
Had to be a ton.
At that time.
Not enough to keep you from hunting, though.
At the time, the funny thing was after this all settled down after that, of course, you get in good shape to go on Western hunts.
Also like Dr. Ned, too.
So you do a lot of physical fitness stuff to get ready for the higher elevation. And the thing that I noticed was really when I left, I was felt like I was conditioned pretty well to go on the trip. And usually when you go to a higher elevation and you come back home and you exercise, you've built up your what's called your hemoglobin, and your hematocrit goes up while you're at the higher elevation because you're trying to get more oxygen. So when you come back home after you've been on a trip like that and you exercise, you feel like you can run a marathon because you've acquired all this new blood, right? Well, so I went to try to exercise.
You used it.
You were
So
bargaining
I went
with
to-
yourself
yeah,
at this.
so,
yeah.
yeah, right.
You were thinking, I got all this new blood. Why don't I just stay?
And I was like, well, I did. And I started exercising, and I felt like I couldn't take 10 steps. And so that was when I realized that I had bled a lot more, and I've just been riding adrenaline, for a few days.
Sure.
And then once I finally was able to relax, and then once I exercised, I really just realized how
Zero
depleted
stamina.
I was.
Yeah,
at
zero
that point.
stamina.
Yeah.
You need to tell them about your next hunt. Like while you were elk hunting, like what happened on that next hunt?
Oh, so I went. I mean, I
you
know
didn't
everybody's thinking, why did you go back hunting? That's such a stupid thing to do. But
You're not saying you went back that afternoon.
yeah,
are
I
you?
did. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I love it.
They are so much alike.
I love it.
And so, but it wasn't one of those situations where I was trying to be, overzealous or anything like that. It's kind of like everybody else is out hunting. And what am I we're going to sit here and camp, and we're going to look at each other and I might as well go sit somewhere. I mean, I wasn't going to go spot and stalk or anything, but I needed to go get everything out of the blind. I'd left everything there. We're miles away. I was like, look, just go take me back to the blind and let me just sit for a while.
Did they look at you like you had a third eye or something?
No, he was. I think by this time, my
have talked to
friend.
me. Yeah, you're the doctor, and you
By
brainwashed.
by that point in time, I mean, I had convinced him that we're going to be okay. I spent a lot of time convincing him. Look, we're going to be okay. We just got to get control.
It's only a
of it.
flesh wound.
Right out of the Ned Miller playbook, too, buddy.
We did some procedures at Graham's one time.
Did Lindsay know before you went back out?
Oh no.
All right. Yeah.
No, not at that point. Once I had decided I was okay, I was going to wait and have that conversation all at once. And so I went back out and I sat there, and elk hunting had been really slow. And so I'm sitting back in the blind. And of course, at this point in time, I've got to have adult supervision at this point, and so it's starting to get dark, and a few elk come to the water hole. There's a few spikes and a few calves and a couple of cows. And they came out and they're watering right out in front of me at about 25, 30 yards. It's 50 yards across the water hole. It's, 10, 12 yards this side of the water hole. They're kind of out in the middle. They're, 20-ish yards, something like that. And then all of a sudden, I look up and there's a herd of cows just running down the hill, toward the water hole. I didn't see a bull initially. And then about that time, this bull comes running over the hill.
Oh my gosh.
This really good bull. And I mean, to me, I don't have to kill a 350-inch bull. To me, any decently racked bull when you're hunting,
absolutely.
when you're hunting on public land, is a big bull.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to score this bull, I would say he was somewhere in the 330, 340s.
That's incredible.
Really good bull. The best bull I'd seen.
Yeah.
On this trip, he was the best bull I'd seen. But he comes running over, and like I said, we had a tough hunt. It wasn't.
At this point in your condition, that's a world record.
Yeah, well,
and so.
And by the way, cows taste really good.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
just
And
as
I
a
had an
heads up.
either-or tag.
Yeah.
I did have it, and I'd actually considered killing one of the cows.
Hey, Lanny.
Hey, Bobby.
Have you ever wondered if your feeder went off? Or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this. This is some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
You know, we always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
To learn more about it, visit moultrieproducts.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie. Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
But part of me was like, when I went back to the blind, I was making a lot of promises to myself. You know, there's a lot of things I'm still dealing with in this moment, you know, psychologically, so to speak. But I decided, I said, okay, I'm going to pull my bow back one time to see if I can do it.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
I didn't think about
and I'm
that.
like,
yeah.
And I'm like, that's it. I'm only going to pull it back once. So I did that, and I was able to get a very reluctant draw.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay,
that would have been awful the next day.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. And
no stitches popped. Hopefully,
and so I'm sitting there, and this bull comes in, and he is doing what you want to see elk hunting. I mean, he is bugling his head off. Oh my God. He is completely pissed off at his cows for running off and leaving him. He comes running. He comes over, and it's a really nice setting because I'm on the side of a hill looking down in a valley, and he's coming up over the hill in front of me. And the cows are come running down, and he did not want those cows to get to water yet. He was so mad when he came. I mean, he was just screaming. And he came flying out, and he cut those cows off and herded them right in the middle of that. And I mean, just went all the way around. There was no other bull. Herded those cows right there in the middle. Put on a show. There was another small bull away, and I mean, just and I was just sitting there, kind of just taking it all in, you know. And then all of a sudden, he eased up, and started pushing those cows down to the water hole. So all the cows came in, and when they did, it sort of pushed those other elk that were in the water hole towards me. And I had a perfect wind, but they're way too close to me. You know, I mean, this is all gonna unravel anytime now. And so I just sat there, and I didn't move because literally I've got elk, you know,
4 yards.
Yeah, 4 or 5 yards away from me. And so, but I had decided if he comes in, if he's, you know, at about 50, 60 yard mark out there, I'm going for broke. I'm going to try to kill him. And so he comes straight in at me and puts his head down at 50 yards. I can't shoot at him because I'm a little bit of an elevation and he's down, and I'm really just looking at his spine, you know. And then he stays there forever, like with his head down, straight at me. And then all of a sudden, and I'm on go, and I'm like, when he breaks and turns right or left, I'm going to draw and let it rip. And then all of a sudden, he looks up and looks straight at the spikes that are kind of in front of me. And he just comes on a beeline straight at me and at those spikes. It's like he just realized those spikes were there and he didn't want them there. And he just comes directly at me to the point where I kind of lose him because he's below me, coming right up at me, and all these elk just blow right past me. I mean, you know, there's, you know, at this point, probably 10 or 15 total elk that just, you know, go running up rocks right beside me. And then that, all of a sudden, that bull is right, I mean, he's 6-7 yards from me, His face is looking straight at me. And I'm just sitting there. I had not even thought I wanted to draw, but there was something in me. I don't think that I could have got a shot off on him, an ethical shot. I'm not afraid to take a frontal shot at a close range.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the time, really. I mean, if as an elk hunter, they cover so much ground so quickly. I was on go, but
you knew you couldn't hold it, in that kind of
Yeah,
state.
with that
So he
injury.
needed to be in position when you drew.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
he
you can't
kind of
help-
needed to be in position.
Once you get old, that gets to be a big priority.
Yeah, and so
Maybe if
he-
you didn't have a sucking chest wound 2 hours earlier, you would have been able to deal with it.
And so the elk runs up, and he's right there, and his eyes are just even with mine right there. And he's just this big, beautiful elk, and he did everything that any elk hunter would want to experience, on a good elk hunt. You were talking about your elk hunt ending so quickly. This took a while for all of this to happen. And I was just soaking it all in. Of course, I'm in a reflective state.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he comes up and he just looks straight at me, like dead in the eyes, and stood there for a second, and then poof, just gone. He saw me, of course, and he just ran off. And I was just sitting there with this. I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't relieved. I was just extremely reflective. But the one resounding theme in my mind was, and like I said, I'm a spiritual person, but he was in that moment, like when he looked at me and I was looking at him in that split second, the only thing that was in my mind was, you are not in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And after all of that being in control for the past few hours, it was like, in that moment, I just knew, I just kind of felt like I wasn't meant to kill that elk, but I was meant to have the experience,
Wow.
And it just, poof, it was gone. And I'm not trying to be hokey about it. I'm not trying.
No, that's
humble.
humble. That'll humble you.
I tell you
That's-
what, you be who you are and say it like you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a spiritual experience.
And so to me, it was just a nod and a wink that you're not in control.
I just let you live.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'll humble you quick.
That's kind of, that's exactly
Y'all
it.
all missed the big question. I've sat here and held my breath for an hour.
What is it?
Who got the rights to the movie, brother?
I mean, for real. That went from the worst hunt ever to the best hunt ever.
Who got the rights to the movie? That is unbelievable.
One heck of a
would you, as a physician, as a doctor, if somebody had been in your clinic and had that wound and just said, "Hey, I'm going to go back hunting this afternoon," would you have ever let them do that?
No, I wouldn't have recommended to anybody to do most of the things that I did in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. But I was kind of in a position where I didn't feel like I could get. I didn't feel like I could get the help that I needed right around there. And what I needed was kind of the things that I sort of know in my medical practice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I focused more on trying to tell myself, okay, what would you do for you if you walked up on you right now? And that's what I really just kind of
incredible
focused on, but I was not, and part of it is, you kind of feel stupid, because I should know better. All of this was preventable,
Well, you say that, and that's kind of
But things happen like
That
this.
accident,
Things happen in a blink.
It just
and
happens.
That's exactly where the idea of this podcast was, just to make people kind of aware and remind them that in the blink of an eye, an accident can occur and change your whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, it really can. And the reflective state that you were in, the spiritual experience, that was
It's incredible.
I was holding my breath the whole time.
So there is one other. That's crazy. There's one other person on the planet as hard-headed as Ned, and he lives 15 miles away, and he's a doctor.
And he's a doctor.
How crazy is that? I
don't know.
I didn't think
something-
anybody existed like that.
Something's going on.
So-
yeah, I don't
No,
know.
I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And looking back on it, lots of
So this was a
Stupidity.
two-bladed head. Could it have been that it just turned just right and went under a vein? And if had it been turned the other way?
Was it a
Yeah,
two
so
blade or a
it was
four
a
blade?
two blade broadhead.
Wow.
It was a Grizzly Stick 125 Silver Flame, and it was vertical.
Yeah.
It went in. I had it knocked vertically, and I mean, when it embedded, it was still in my bow. Like I had to hold the arrow and take my bow off of it. You know, so it was vertically oriented. It was up and down. So your ribs kind of go that way.
Right.
So in my opinion, just looking back on it, what I think is the fact that it was up and down instead of horizontal kept it from, it hit my rib and stopped, because like this wasn't a violent catch.
Right.
This wasn't like I lunged really hard. This was like the bow's falling in your mind. You don't want
Right.
you don't want your
It's a
you don't want
reflex,
your-
yeah, sure.
you don't want your
Just a
equipment
reflex,
to
yeah.
hit the ground.
You just grab
know?
it, yeah.
And you just kind of went like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I did, the broadhead is so sharp. The broadhead is so sharp that it just did its thing.
They're deadly, scalpel sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, those broadheads are exceptionally sharp. And that the veins that around your ribs, they run under your ribs so that you don't really have a lot of vessels on top of a rib. They're all under.
Well, that one runs under, kind of up under your clavicle, but it's on top of your rib.
Yeah.
The vein.
The subclavian.
The subclavian
Yeah,
vein
the subclavian
is,
does,
yeah. So I think it made it to my rib, but I think the reason that it didn't go further was because the broadhead was vertical versus horizontal, because the ribs kind of run in a horizontal-ish manner right there.
Yeah.
You've got things to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the message I get.
Somebody's not done with you.
You've got things to do here in life. Lots of things.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a wake up.
Yeah, like I said, it's lucky for you that you were there.
Well, it was lucky for me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That
Someone's looking out for you.
that he was there, and that and it gave me the clarity.
Yes.
I think in the moment to kind
Unbelievable
of work through
presence
it.
of mind. It's unbelievable.
Well, if a guy's listening to this, the takeaway is that being able to stay calm and keep your wits about you is a big
Absolutely
help.
number one.
And that's probably way easier said than done.
The most important thing is to stay calm. But you may have heard him say it. If you listen back to the podcast, you'll hear Robbie use the word pressure 1,000 times, and that with a laceration or a puncture, that's number 2 after stay calm is put pressure. Get pressure on it.
Yeah,
as soon as you can.
And to me, you cannot ambulate at elevation, higher elevation, and hold adequate pressure like on your torso area. Like you might be able to hold it on your hand and walk, but an injury in this area, you really can't hold adequate pressure while you're moving.
Sure.
You know.
I carry one of those kits with me too when we go out west. A big kit in the truck that has a lot of stuff in it, and then a smaller kit in the backpack when you're hiking. Did you have any quick clot in? I've always wondered about this, and I've been on the fence about ever carrying this with me,
Yeah,
and
I know
I
what you're
don't.
gonna
So did you have quick clot in the pack before? And second, the
I
second
did not
question
have it
is,
before.
do you
but
have
what
it now?
What I did have was gel foam,
Okay.
and you can take a gel foam pad and put on top
Yep.
of that, and that'll help with clotting. Honestly, and this is the thing that most people are just not gonna have with them.
No.
I think that the thing that really helped me outside of holding, maybe knowing the anatomy and being able to hold good pressure on it, was the lidocaine with epinephrine in it. That once I got it in there, the small oozing, the continuous oozing, got significantly better. That was, and I wouldn't have thought that, but it did do a good job.
Made a
Now,
big
of course,
difference.
my heart rate was through the roof. I used so much of it. I mean, for epinephrine is adrenaline,
Right.
Yeah.
and so I was pretty amped up after
I bet.
from all of that. But anyway.
Wow.
Well, guys, I don't know what to say. It's just been exhausting just
It is.
listening to this.
Yeah, that
And
was-
I'm so thankful that,
Yeah.
that you're okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the story that you just told is it kind of makes the hair on my arm stand up. But
The hair on my chest is kind of standing up right in that area.
yeah, wow.
Yeah, you can't be too careful. I mean,
That's right.
In a blink of an eye.
yeah, I mean,
Blink of an eye.
I mean, how many of us have
all
cuddled him and
the
hung
time.
a
All
blow
the
up?
time,
Every time I get in
all-
the stand.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's just, I can just see it happening.
Well, and people ask me, they're like, why did you hang it up where it was above you like that, where it could
I do it all the time.
even,
Yeah, sure.
and I think my automatic response is, because I know if I have it down around my legs, I'm
Yeah,
going to kick
yeah.
the broadhead. I'm going to tear up my legs with it, or I'm going to grab it or something. That I hang it up to be safer, And then the other thing was, the whole reason that I stuck it in my chest was because I took it and pointed it away from me to break the branches off so I could see better through the blind. I was trying to be careful, and it backfired on me.
Yeah.
That's the part that really kind of rubs me the wrong
Well,
way.
sometimes taking a risk pays off, and sometimes playing it safe, even though it's lower risk. I mean,
Yeah.
If if one person out there is careful listening to this, because that broadhead, you can get hurt so bad with the razor sharp broadhead, and they cut to bleed too. Just why we use them.
Yeah, they're designed to kill.
Yes.
And they're designed to penetrate. They're so well designed now.
Yes.
And I didn't even know that. I really didn't even realize that it happened until I felt the torque
something
of it.
tugging on your chest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the torque on my shirt.
Oh my
It was my shirt being pulled. It really didn't hurt at all.
Well, Robbie, it's an incredible story, and I hope somebody listening, I hope it helps them down the road somewhere. And your testimony that's come out of this, your faith and all that, it's just incredible.
It is.
It is. I've enjoyed listening to it.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow. I tell you, Mac,
we're all just kind of.
We got to go hunting with this guy.
I've been hunting with him before.
I'm gonna walk.
Let me
behind
just say though, if you need a doctor to go hunting with you, a second doctor to go on these elk hunts, just
Dr. Ned.
Yeah, see, he
just
can
let me know now.
Dr. Ned. And see, you wouldn't have to go through all that next time. He'd be there to take care of you.
He'll be there.
I'm happy to sit on that water.
Likewise, he feels comfortable. You could take care of him.
Absolutely.
Take a doctor hunt.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm so stubborn and thick and dull that I need to take one with me.
We all, yes. Same.
It's a great story.
Same problem.
Mac, you got anything to add to it?
No, I'm glad my turkey hunting buddy's all right.
Well, Richie, wake up, Richie.
I don't have a mic, so.
Yeah. Well,
amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Ned, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
added
for
a lot
the
to that.
invite. Yeah, this was fun. And
Yeah.
yeah. glad you're okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we get a round two with them, not focus on that, but just on taking care of yourself in general.
Yeah.
Be good.
It sure was.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, everyday stuff,
Yeah, it can happen quick out there. And they say when one thing goes wrong, you got 3 strikes when you're out there. If one thing goes wrong, and then communication equipment's not all that great, and that's strike 2. If something else would have gone wrong, we'd have been in real trouble on that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it could have just gone totally different way.
Yeah, so real quick, the sat phone would have been the thing for people to take with them.
Yeah, our little satellite. Yeah,
now they have
satellite communicators, and
probably rent them for a week or something if you want to. Can't you?
I think you can.
Yeah,
but
I think you can.
I've read a little bit about that since. And I don't keep up, but I don't do social media. I don't keep up with the latest technology with everything. But my understanding is the newer iPhones, like after iPhone 14, you can actually have a satellite function on them where you can message, you can make emergency calls, of course, and I think you can make emergency calls on older iPhones as well. But you can actually message now and use it kind of like a hybrid cell phone on the newer iPhones.
It's the iPhone 18 update where they're going to allow you to do satellite. I don't quote me on this, but I have read that they're going to allow you to do satellite texting on this new.
That is
update.
worth it. I won't ever be out like that again without that capability.
Yeah, and there's also some smaller handheld units that are ultra lightweight.
Yeah.
Specifically for texting and sending messages.
Yeah, and
from anywhere.
And that's the one of the real silly or stupid things about it from that I know better. I would never advise my child to be in this situation. And other people listening to this that hunt in more remote places are like, yeah, that's just dumb. You need to have effective communication. I think that, obviously I learned that lesson the hard way, but sometimes you end up in situations where you just kind of end up there and there you are.
I mean, there's just, trying to keep yourself from taking extra risks. If you're crossing a creek, don't try to step on the rocks. Just walk across the creek and get your feet wet. Little things like that.
Right.
I was thinking today when I was doing some work out there, how just not running equipment or out on a hunt like that, or in a tree stand or climbing up, or any of these things, getting in a big hurry and getting in a hurry will get you hurt.
Yeah.
So quickly. And I'm not saying necessarily this did per se, but in so many cases, just have the presence of mind that every single thing that could harm you,
Yeah, and being aware makes all the difference. When you're hooked, I've had a handful of injuries come in to ERs or clinics from things like hooking up a PTO shaft or, it's stuff that you do 1,000 times before, or walking to a deer stand for an hour and a half sit. And trip on it's stuff that you do every day that's gonna that's gonna get you when you're just not paying attention. And when you're out in the woods like that,
no one else around,
you really have to pay attention to
absolutely.
Well, my one thing I will say that jumped in my mind, I've started to do more, and with technology you have your phone, but don't, and I think I may have said this, but for application around here everyday hunting, don't ever go anymore. Don't go to a spot and especially maybe if you're sitting on the ground or something, but you should let someone know where you're going to be.
Where you parked.
You especially need to, I can text before I go into the stand by the football field or whatever, and they'll know where I am. So you should not, because it could happen if you fell and got hurt, just like Tony's story. Mm-hmm. He didn't get it was a miracle that they showed up, or he'd have been gone in a few more hours. And you can't count on being able to pull your phone out, whatever. Let someone know where you are every time you go is my point. Just do it.
Yep. Wow. Well, Robbie, we appreciate you coming over here.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Dr. Robbie Godwin. We've really enjoyed this one. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.